Hi friends, welcome to another great Wednesday night of RAs and GAs. Tonight we're going to be learning more about the Allens and wrapping up learning about what they're doing in the Middle East and the incredible things that God has them doing. You know, the Allens have been serving in all kinds of different countries in the Middle East for over 16 years now, and they are continuing, and they plan to continue to serve over there as long as God allows them, because they know that people over there need to hear about Jesus. Before we learn more about the incredible things they're doing, and tonight we're going to learn about one person in particular that they've reached with the gospel and to see the things that he's done in his life since beginning to follow Jesus. But before we do that, I want to talk about our memory verse and our virtue of the month. So our memory verse is Matthew 28:6. It says, "He is not here, he has risen, just as he said he would. Come and see the place where he was lying." And then our virtue of the month is faith. Faith is believing in God, trusting his word, and knowing him through his son Jesus. You know, as we talk about the Allens and we talk about really our virtue of the month, they have to have faith. They talk about how every day they're looking for the people God is going to bring them, put in their path to share the gospel with. And remember, they can't just proclaim Jesus openly, because it's dangerous to just talk about Jesus and share the good news as open as we can here. So they have to build relationships and friendships and really trust God to put the people in their life that they can know they can share the gospel with, and that their hearts will be open to it. One story that they heard about and they got to be a part of was a man named Ahmad. And Ahmad was a Muslim. He didn't believe in Christianity or in Jesus, and they began to become friends with him and teach him about who Jesus was. And they said he was kind of half listening. Like he was almost pretending to listen, because he liked the Allens and he enjoyed being around them, but he really didn't care about Jesus. And he didn't believe anything they really said about Jesus. And so they kept talking and kept becoming closer friends and sharing the good news of who Jesus was with Ahmad. And slowly he listened more. But he still wasn't ready to believe in Jesus. One day they invited Ahmad over to their house and they showed him a movie about Jesus. And while he was watching that movie, all of the things that he had heard from the Allens, well, he started to see them, and he just realized that they were real. And he believed them. And not only did he believe the things that they had said were true, he wanted to follow Jesus. Just like the disciples did in that movie, and just like the Allens were doing in the Middle East, he wanted Jesus to be his Lord and Savior. And so he told them that. He said, "Hey, I want to follow Jesus. I want to be a Christian." And so they got to pray and ask God and Jesus to forgive his sins. And they started teaching Ahmad about what it meant, Ahmad, they're the Allens, teaching Ahmad about what it meant to follow Jesus. But before we learn about what happened next in his story, we have a short little video that goes over our Bible verse. I would love for you to say the Bible verse along with the video as it pops up. So let's check out this short video, and we'll learn more about Ahmad and his story after this. You know, the reason I wanted to show that Bible verse is because Ahmad discovered that truth. That Jesus wasn't dead, that he was alive, and that Ahmad could follow him because he was alive and his sins could be forgiven because of what Jesus did on the cross and how he raised from the dead 3 days later. So once he started following Jesus, you know, everything wasn't just easy. Actually, everything got really hard. His boss at his job found out that he was a Christian, and he fired him. And then he said that, Ahmad says it was hard to get a job. He would get a job, and then that boss would find out from his last boss that Ahmad was a Christian, and they would fire him because of his beliefs. He said even one day, a group of men beat him because they knew he was a Christian. Now you're thinking like, man, that's awful. That's so horrible. But here's the thing. We can trust God and trust Jesus to tell us the truth. And Jesus told us that some people would hate us for following him. They wouldn't understand, and they would be mad at us. And that's true. It was true then, and it's true today. But here's the thing. Ahmad was faithful. And when we're faithful to following Jesus and following God, we can have a bigger impact than what exists on just this world. And to learn about that, we're going to see what happens to Amon next. So he gets married, and his wife is not a Christian. His wife's family is not a Christian. And in fact, Amon's family is not Christians. They don't really listen to Amon as he's trying to teach them, and all they see is that bad stuff that's happening to him, that he can't get a job and that he's getting beaten up for being a Christian. They don't understand the truth about who Jesus is and what he did for Amon, how he forgave his sins, and because of that, Amon has a relationship with God just the way God intended. So throughout the rest of his life, Amon, he starts to share with his wife. He starts to teach her about who Jesus is. And not just his wife, but her family and his own family. And slowly, his wife and a large portion of her family become Christians. And then one day, later on, his mother, Amon's mother, gets sick. And they don't think that she's going to live very long. She calls Amon over and she says, I want you to tell me more about Jesus. Bring a Bible. And so he begins to teach her about who Jesus is to him and how his relationship with Jesus started and how it's grown and how God has used Amon to do incredible things and how Jesus can forgive sin. He's sharing the gospel with her, with his own mother. And as she lay in the bed, she became a follower of Jesus too. She decided that what Amon was telling her and what the Bible was, what she was reading, what he was reading her, was true. That Jesus really did die and he really did come back from the dead 3 days later. And that her sins could be forgiven because of what Jesus did. And not only did she believe, but then she said, Amon, I want you to go get enough Bibles for all of your brothers and sisters, for all of my children. And I'm going to give them to them. And I'm going to tell them that this book, this Bible, is the truth and they should believe it. You know, Amon's life wasn't easier after he became a Christian. But think about what he accomplished because he was faithful to Jesus when he followed him. Did he get beaten up? Yeah. Did he lose a couple jobs? Yes. But he had an eternal impact. His wife, her sins are forgiven and she'll be going to heaven. Her family, the people that followed her family, their sins are forgiven and they have a relationship with God and they're going to heaven. And his own mother now has a relationship with God and is going to heaven because Amon was faithful to Jesus. And not just Amon, but the Allens. They were faithful in going to a dangerous place, a place that is not necessarily safe for Christians. And they shared with him. They were looking for people to build relationships with, and they found him. And by finding him, they had a huge eternal impact that they could have never imagined because they had faith. They trusted God. They knew that his plan for them was to be over there and is to still be over there sharing the gospel. And that by doing that, they can reach more people through building relationships and through just getting to know them. And by sharing the gospel because they're doing what God's asked them to do. You know, thinking about Amon is incredible. But really, he did the same thing we should be doing. He shared with the people closest to him. And he didn't give up sharing. You know, his mom didn't become a Christian until years later. He kept being faithful and sharing the good news with her every chance he got. Who are some people in our lives that we can be faithful to Jesus to keep sharing the gospel, even if it's hard, even if it doesn't always work the way we think it should or want it to? Man, Amon has had an amazing impact in the Middle East just by being faithful. How can we be faithful in Chickasha to share the gospel, to be missionaries here with our friends and family, and make sure that we have an eternal impact just like him? You know, next week we're going to be learning more about more of missionaries, a different set of missionaries. We're not going to learn about the Allens next week. We have a new missionaries that we're going to be learning about. But I want you to continue to pray for the Allens and the things that they're doing in the Middle East, because obviously it's working. God is moving. And you know what? When we're faithful here, God will move and work here too. I know he already is. So I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I can't wait to see you again soon. Bye, everybody.